You think you know the symbiote story, but there's a name most fans have never heard, one that makes Venom look like a footnote. A being so old he existed before light itself, so powerful that every symbiote you've ever seen, Venom, Carnage, all of them, are just pieces of what he unleashed. Who is he? And why does the answer change everything you thought you knew about this universe? That's exactly what we're about to find out. Null, the god who created them all. Before we talk about any individual symbiote, we need to talk about where they actually came from, because this is the part most casual fans completely miss. Long before Spider-Man, long before Venom, long before almost everything in the Marvel universe, there was only darkness. Endless, total darkness. And sitting perfectly comfortable inside that void was a being named Null. He wasn't a king yet. He wasn't feared across galaxies. He simply existed in a universe where nothing changed and nothing bothered him. Then the Celestials arrived and started filling his darkness with stars, planets, and light. To most creatures, that sounds wonderful. To Null, it felt like a personal insult. So he fought back. He reached into the darkness itself and forged a living weapon, all black, the Necro Sword. With it, he did something that should have been impossible. He killed a Celestial, one of the most powerful beings in existence. Gone. But one weapon wasn't enough. Null wanted an army, so he started creating living weapons from the same darkness, creatures that could bond with hosts, take control of bodies, and spread his influence across entire galaxies. Those creatures became the symbiotes. Here's the twist that changes everything. Null wanted total control. The symbiotes were supposed to be his soldiers, mindless, obedient, destructive. But after bonding with thousands of different hosts across countless worlds, they started developing something Null never anticipated. Minds of their own, values of their own, ideas like honor, sacrifice, and freedom. Eventually, they turned on him. They imprisoned their own creator inside a living planet made entirely of symbiote matter. That planet? Null sat inside it for thousands of years, until events on Earth finally set him free again. Every symbiote in a Marvel history exists because of Null. Venom, Carnage, Riot, none of them happen without the King in Black. And now that the movies are slowly pulling him into the spotlight, the full scale of what's coming is starting to become very clear. Venom, the one who started everything. Ask anyone to name a Marvel symbiote and they'll say Venom before you finish the sentence. But here's something most people don't know. Venom was never supposed to become this famous. The symbiote first bonded with Spider-Man after arriving on Earth. At first it seemed perfect. Enhanced strength, unlimited organic webbing, and an appearance that looked genuinely terrifying. Peter Parker had absolutely no complaints, until he realized the symbiote was slowly taking over his mind. After Peter rejected it, the symbiote needed a new host. And it found one who hated Peter Parker just as much as it did. Eddie Brock, a disgraced journalist with nothing left to lose and a fury he had nowhere to put. That bond created something Marvel had never seen before, which, considering Marvel already had gods, aliens, and a giant purple warlord with a bedazzled glove, is really saying something. Venom wasn't just powerful, he was a completely different kind of character. Giant teeth. That impossibly long tongue, the ability to flip between terrifying monster and reluctant hero depending on the situation. One moment threatening Spider-Man's life, next, protecting a child on a street corner. That contradiction is exactly why audiences fell in love with him. Underneath all the chaos and teeth, there was something strangely relatable. Two completely different beings trying to make a partnership work despite having almost nothing in common. The movies took that dynamic and made it global. Suddenly, Venom wasn't just a comic book character, he was a phenomenon. And without Venom, none of the symbiotes that came after him would exist, because what came next started with him directly. Carnage, Venom's most terrifying mistake. While Eddie Brock was in prison, Venom produced an offspring. Fate placed that newborn in the worst possible cell, right next to Cletus Cassidy, a serial killer with no code, no limits, and absolutely no interest in redemption. If you had to design the worst possible roommate for a baby symbiote, Cletus would be the answer every time. Carnage merged directly through Cletus's bloodstream, deeper than any typical symbiote bond. They didn't just share a body, they shared a worldview completely, and that worldview terrified even Venom. Blades, spikes, tendrils, reshaped instantly. Regeneration that made him nearly impossible to stop. But the real danger was never the powers, it was the unpredictability. Venom follows a personal code. Carnage doesn't recognize codes exist. When Carnage reached the screen, audiences immediately understood. The scariest monsters aren't from another planet. They're the ones who actually enjoy being monsters. Scream, the most distinctive symbiote. Not every symbiote becomes famous for being the strongest. Some stand out because they're simply impossible to ignore. That's exactly what happened with Scream. Like Riot, Scream came from the Life Foundation's experiments with symbiote offspring. The organization wanted powerful, obedient protectors. What they got instead was something far less predictable. The symbiote bonded with Donna Diego, a security operative whose already unstable mental state made the partnership significantly more dangerous than anyone planned for. Imagine handing a symbiote to someone who was already having a difficult time. Now imagine that going badly. That's Donna and Scream. At first glance, Scream looks completely different from most symbiotes. The bright yellow appearance alone grabs attention in a species that trends heavily toward black. But the real signature feature is those living, hair-like tendrils, dozens of twisting strands that strike enemies from multiple directions simultaneously, making her one of the hardest symbiotes to fight at close range. That unique appearance, combined with Donna's increasingly unpredictable behavior, made Scream one of the most dangerous and misunderstood members of the symbiote family. She was never the strongest in the room, but she was consistently the hardest to read. Among a species full of monsters, Scream managed to carve out an identity entirely her own, and comic fans have never forgotten her for it. Riot, the villain who proved Venom wasn't alone. For a long time, casual audiences thought Venom was the only symbiote that mattered. Then, the first Venom movie introduced Riot, and that assumption disappeared instantly. Riot came from the Life Foundation, an organization obsessed with harnessing symbiote power for private use. Several symbiotes emerged from their experiments, but Riot stood apart immediately. Bigger, more aggressive, built less like a character and more like a weapon that happened to be walking around. In the film, Riot bonded with Carlton Drake, the Life Foundation's leader. The pairing made immediate sense. Both wanted dominance. Both believed they were superior to everything around them. Together, they became one of the most memorable villain pairings in Sony's Venom universe. What made Riot genuinely dangerous was his adaptability. He could construct axes, blades, hammers, and spikes within seconds. But his most unsettling ability was jumping between hosts, using people as temporary vessels, burning through them, moving on without hesitation. For movie audiences, Riot served one specific and important purpose. He demonstrated that Venom wasn't unique. There were others. And if Riot was already this dangerous, imagine what else Null had created out there in the darkness. Toxin, the symbiote. Both Venom and Carnage feared. Here's something that should immediately get your attention. When Carnage produced an offspring, both Venom and Carnage agreed on something for the first and only time. This new symbiote needed to be destroyed immediately. Two beings who wanted to kill each other looked at one newborn and decided it was the bigger problem. Would you want to meet the thing that makes Venom and Carnage nervous? That thing has a name. It's Toxin, the 1000th symbiote in the lineage, believed to be more powerful than anything before it. That turned out to be completely accurate. Toxin bonded with police officer Pat Mulligan, who tried to teach him what justice meant. It partially worked, but the raw power exceeded both Venom and Carnage. Faster, stronger, better healing, plus venomous fangs capable of poisoning enemies on contact. That's not an honorable mention. That's the main event. Agent Venom, the redemption nobody saw coming. Flash Thompson spent years making Peter Parker's life miserable in high school. Then he became one of the greatest Venom hosts in Marvel history. Yes, really. As Flash grew older, he changed completely. The reckless bully became a decorated military soldier. Then he lost both legs in combat. His story seemed finished. Then the government offered him something impossible: access to the Venom symbiote as part of a classified Black Ops program. Suddenly Flash could walk again, fight again, matter again. But this wasn't the Venom anyone recognized. Flash operated as Agent Venom under strict government supervision, with hard time limits on how long he could stay bonded. Too long meant losing control, losing himself entirely. That tension, discipline against the symbiote's constant pull toward chaos, became Agent Venom's defining characteristic. He had all the power, strength, agility, shape-shifting, healing, everything that made Venom terrifying. The difference was that Flash fought to control it every single day rather than surrendering to it. Before Agent Venom, symbiotes were monsters or villains. Flash Thompson proved they could build heroes instead. That reframe changed everything about how Marvel told symbiote stories afterward.